career theory, but we are somewhat guided by some of these career theories. I think it's important just to kind of get an idea of kind of where career services has come from and kind of where we see ourselves going. And you'll probably hear a lot of these things that you recognize, and you might be shocked to learn that some of this stuff is kind of old school thinking. So way back in the early 1900s is when the first career center was really started. It's recognized to be this fellow named Frank Parsons started a career center in Boston, and it was really to help immigrants find jobs and transition to their life in America. Originally kind of the vocational guidance and stuff from a university perspective was really on the faculty to help advise students on what they might do after they graduate. As we moved into the 20s and 30s, after the post-World War I kind of baby boom, there was a greater need for guidance for people entering the teaching profession. So that's kind of where things really started to pick up as far as having dedicated guidance for a specific type of career path. Moving into kind of the 40s, things started to switch to be more kind of a job placement model. It was really a reactive type of approach and philosophy. This was, in this time period, we had post-World War II, GI Bill, a lot of people kind of were entering into the workforce with a booming economy. There was a greater demand, employer demand going on. This is kind of where the trait and personality stuff started to surface, where people who were working in this field were trying to match people based on their abilities and skills to specific careers. So it was popularized at that point, and that's still something that we use a little bit here and there. So it's kind of carried forward, and we'll see that a little bit as we get to some of the tools and stuff that that folks use. At this point, though, the success of a career center or an office like ours would be on placement numbers. So when we're being judged on success, you'll see it does change a little bit. But this time it was really kind of placement numbers. So career counseling really started to take shape in the 70s. And this was as the economy kind of slowed up, you can imagine that now the responsibility is shifted to the student to find out what to do with their lives and their jobs and stuff. And it really changed from placement to more of a quote unquote counseling model. Some of this has to do with the self-actualization movement and people taking ownership and responsibility for their own lives and paths. Success really was measured at this time by appointment volume and workshop volume and those types of interactions that career offices had with students. Now, when the .com thing started to take off and there was, really a more competitive landscape for students, this is when the idea of professional networking really started to take hold. So career centers are really at this time responsible for facilitating, those relationships with employers and students. And, that's when networking events really started to take off. It was a really popular thing to do. This is also when new recruiting software and stuff started to, kind of take off. So we use, there's a bunch of different recruiting software that's out there, both on the career center side of things, but also on the employer side of things. And these things really started to shape how people would find work and find talent at the same time. So the success here, though, was really on learning outcomes when it went in this time period. So we're kind of right now, in between this connections, communities, and social mobility type stuff, but really at the economic downturn of 2008, things started to change a little bit. And there's more pressure from students and parents and faculty, administrators, government agencies, and things like that, to make sure that people were finding work. So things became really specialized. There's still really transactional stuff that's happening, resume building, those sorts of things. But really shifting focus to experiential learning, mentoring, and creating communities of learners is kind of what the stuff that was going on. It still really is kind of, what we're facing now. Success is really measured at this point in first destination outcomes, and then in long-term professional success that we're even tracking now. So you can see that success has been measured in a number of different ways. And now as we kind of move into social mobility with more people, attending college from different, social experiences and socioeconomic classes, and making sure that there are, opportunities for everybody is kind of where the future is kind of lies. So I know it was kind of a long-winded thing, but for people who kind of appreciate the history of that stuff, sometimes it can be really helpful when you're working with students to kind of know where all these things play out. So there are a number of theories. I'm not going to go into any great detail on any of these theories, but I will say that you're probably familiar with Myers-Briggs and MBTI. And we do still use a lot of the Holland Code type stuff, which is based it's an interest inventory. You can see that that's the trait and type stuff, and that really dates way back to, kind of that post-World War II sort of thing, for helping people align careers with their interests and their skills and abilities and stuff. So many of the career coaches on staff are guided by different theories, or they pull things and borrow things from theories. We don't, subscribe to a specific theory in our office, but, most of us are trained and are aware of some of these theories. They do come into play when we're meeting with students. But this doesn't mean that you need to be an expert in career theory for you to work with students. To be honest with you, if you have students approaching you and asking you career related questions, you're already there. I mean, it's the trust that's the important part. And that's why this program is really so important for us and for the students too. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about career development. What is it? What is it even? So career development, we really look at it as just things that can help individuals reach their goals and their career goals in particular. So we recognize that students and people in general are at different points in their career development. We don't subscribe to you're a first year student, this is what you should do. You're a second year, you're sophomore, this is what you do. It can be very different based on that student's experiences and goals and what the knowledge of themselves and their career paths are. So we'll talk a little bit about how that looks in a career coaching appointment. But that is what career development is. And we also recognize that it is relatively cyclical. Things, start over, and we are at different points in career development all the time throughout the course of our lives. We really aim to help students kind of thrive on their own, but know that they can use us as a resource and learn about how they can kind of develop their career throughout the course of their lives. So career development model is, it's a visual representation. We've had a number of models in our office over the course of time. Sometimes we share these with students that, what it looks like, and sometimes we don't, but we use it in our own heads to kind of get a gauge for where the student is in their, in their career development. So what that looks like right now in our office is that we're trying to pinpoint whether a student is in the exploratory phase, if they've kind of identified what they, kind of what their ultimate goals are, or they kind of have a sense, then we kind of explore what is it that student can do to develop their skill sets, so that they can be successful as they apply for things. And sometimes that leads to what is our timeline for implementation for, setting all these things in motion. Am I going to be applying for an internship, a job? Where is it? What do I need to know? How do I find out how to be a competitive applicant and all those sorts of things? So we work with students as early as first year. We work with students who are exploring their majors and want to know how their major applies to their career. And we also work with students who are like, yeah, I want to be, this. What is it that I want to do? So there's a broad spectrum of where students lie. And even those students who say that they know exactly what it is that they want to do are many times encouraged to explore as well. So there's a lot of things, as you know, students don't know yet, and they are exploring even unintentionally. So that's how we kind of shape our conversations with students. There's a lot of activities that go along with each one of these things. In the exploring area, we might have students take an assessment to explore their interests or their values or their personality. We're not big assessment folks at our office, although we might have conversations with students. We're trying to dig that stuff out. There are students who request, or students that we do recognize might need to take, an interest assessment so that they can at least formulate what their ideas are in words, that they're interested in X, Y, or Z. We help students figure out how they're going to get involved on campus or get involved in the field, advising them and to exploring ideas for academic programs, careers, so on and so forth. Now, the developing thing, I think a lot of students and people around campus think that the core thing that we do in our office is help students with resumes. And it is something that we spend a lot of time doing, but it is certainly not the ultimate thing that our office does. But that is one example of developing a professional material. We also help students with all sorts of materials, including personal statements for graduate school, helping come up with ideas and evaluating some writing for med school applications, cover letters, and you name it, anything post-graduation that requires a material, we can help students with. We also help set timelines and keep students accountable as they implement their plans. So those are kind of the broad strokes ideas of kind of what we do. So again, we really recognize that students might be coming in as a first-year student with already having had an internship, right? And that they might be at a completely different point than a student who is graduating this year and has not had an internship or has no idea even where they want to go. So we recognize that people and students are all over the place as far as what their knowledge is of kind of their career goals, and we use that in our coaching session. So we really, in our one-on-one appointments, we're working to evaluate where that student is, and then help them figure out what the next steps are, and then offering many times some resources that might help them make those decisions or make strides toward whatever their goal is. So although we do ask about some decision-making stuff, we're really future-focused, and that's kind of the idea about coaching in general, is that we're talking about what the future is, not necessarily the past, although many students are making their first really large life-changing decisions right in our offices. And it's for a lot of them, that's the first big decisions that they've had to make. So we do sometimes rely on, well, who helps you make decisions in the past? Who would you ask for, for advice on this particular topic? With the career development model, sometimes we'll share that with the student. Oftentimes we're just using it for our own guidance to kind of figure out where we might align our resources to help that student. So when students show up in our office, they don't really know what to expect sometimes, but we tell students, come into our office, you don't have to know anything. Like, you want a resume critique and you've never done a resume before, you don't even have one, that's fine. Like, you can come in, we'll help you, learn even what it is. But we use what's called a career coaching model. And we do that as a partnership with the student. And so career coaching, as defined, is a partnership with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential, which is particularly essential in today's uncertain and complex environment. Partnership is really the key word in here. We do not tell students what to do, what they should do. Students already have all the answers. We usually just have to help them come up with them on their own and keep them motivated, and all that stuff. So really the difference between career counseling and career coaching is that counseling worries about the past in general and how to fix what's going on. And the counselor is the person with the power usually. So they're the professional with the answers. Where coaching, on the other hand, really a future focused sort of thing. Where is it that you want to go and how can we help you get there? They should expect that when they come to our office, we are working to help them create solutions and not fix solutions. Because it is a partnership, and we rely on that trusting relationship to help students, kind of get out of their own way sometimes. It is more of a collegial relationship that we have with students in the coaching model. I'm not going to read this word for word, but The whole idea is that the coach is there to help support the student in setting their own goals and coming up with actions. And we use specific questioning and techniques to get the student to follow through on those actions and goals and reevaluate whenever needed. So a lot of goal setting and just a lot of conversation in general is kind of how. There are many, many coaching questions that we might use, but these are kind of the basics. What is it that you're seeking? What is it that you want? And maybe you don't know what it is that you want. So sometimes we start right there. And then, asking the student, what can you do about it and what will you do about it? And this is how we start to shape our goal setting process. Now, the student might not know what resources are there, so we pride ourselves on having quite a few resources and knowing where to kind of point students to. But it is really on that student to explore those resources and, to fulfill their own goals. Now, when it comes to setting these goals for any sort of career development thing, we like to set timelines and ask the student, how will they know they've been successful and how will I know you've been successful when you come back and visit me? So sometimes our conversations are holding students accountable. Hey, we've met with you 3 times. You haven't done these 4 things. Let's talk about how we can get those things done before the next time that you come back and meet with us. But more often than not, students are kind of all about taking the resources that are given to them and putting them into action. So we found real success in this model. So I think I'm going to pause right now to answer any questions. And Jess, you're going to have to feed them to me because, well, hang on here. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing, so maybe I'll get a little bit more real estate here. Now, do we have any questions come in?
No questions in the chat, but if anyone has any questions right now about anything that Erin shared, feel free to either put it in the chat or just unmute yourself. We can talk about it.
Now, we had a couple of questions come in before the presentation when folks registered. So maybe I'll take the time and answer some of those questions. And then if something dawns on you, you can go ahead and ask. One of the questions that we had was related to internships and if there are any resources for internships in the state. And one thing you should know is that internship season it's not quite upon us yet, but we're getting there. So we see a lot of internships that are posted in the month of September and early October. And then again, there's a really big uptick in internship postings in the month of February. Now, we all know there's a lot of weird stuff going on this year. The internship market was all over the place last summer. We had a lot of students who had internships that were pulled, couldn't find internships. We try to create opportunities for students like the career leadership experience that we did last summer. We'll be doing that again. But in general, internships are just like jobs. They are posted somewhere. Students apply for them. They interview for them. So we can help them identify internship opportunities. We also work with students to create their own internships as well. So, one of my favorite moves is for first and second year students. Maybe they don't have the credits yet, or they're not eligible for an internship because they're not on the brink of graduating the next year. So, creating internships basically out of current jobs that they had. If they work at the grocery store, maybe they're an econ business major interested in that. Hey, can you work in the office once a week and learn about, kind of the inner workings of the business? Is that an idea? Can you pop over into your town hall? I'm UConn student home for the summer looking for experience, whatever. So we help students think creatively about creating their own internships. But internships, again, are also like a posted thing. So on internships.uconn.edu, there are a lot of resources there. There's niche internship boards based on industry interests. We also will have lots of internship postings on Handshake. So when you're working with students, they're asking questions about internships, you can encourage them to search for stuff, share it with you what they're thinking about applying to, for your feedback, refer them to us. We run a whole month worth of internship programming over the course of February. So there is a lot of stuff going on as far as internships are concerned. So let's see. So far, the career model looks like what a faculty advisor would do to help their own graduate students create and implement a professional development plan. Yeah, no, I mean, there really is not much more of a difference. I mean, I think that coaching in general is about, you know, goal setting and keeping someone accountable. I mean, all the way through when you think about like an athletic coach kind of does the same sort of thing. So, you know, you'll see similarities in a lot of this stuff. Honestly, this is none of this stuff is rocket science, right? We've all applied for jobs, gotten jobs, interviewed, you know, like, you know what it's like to be on that end of things. And we all work with students. We do it every day. So we know kind of where those students are and what their strengths are. And, you know, as faculty or advisors or those who work with students on a day-to-day basis, you know the student better than we're going to know them if they just show up, you know, in our office. So you have a lot of you know, a lot of power and ability to help that student in a number of ways. And you don't have to follow some sort of set rules of how, you know, what questions you ask and things like that. Students will know that you're there to help them, you know, and, you know, we all make mistakes. You know, sometimes I make it up as I go along too, you know what I mean? So we don't all have the answers for everything. And, you know, just as an aside, and this kind of relates to another question, there was a question that came in from a faculty member who wants to know what they do if a student is their faculty advisor and a student is asking about switching into a major in a completely different school or college. And what is it that how do they answer that student? What do they say? You might not know what it's like to be a business major, what that looks like, or education or whatever. And, you know, sometimes we don't know all the answers as well. So in those cases, ask the student what the goals are, sit down with them. You know, I don't know what those careers look like. What can we look at to kind of get a sense of that? And oh, here's Vault. Let's kind of go through and see what the skills and attributes are, what the work life looks like. And, you know, we have all those resources. We do training on all that stuff, and walking through it with the student or pointing them in the right direction is sometimes all you have to do. It's perfectly fine to say, listen, I don't have the answers, but I'd be glad to sit down with you and figure it out on my own, you know, with you. Let's see.
I got a question that I think would be great to talk about as the group. So I'll just read it and then Erin would love your thoughts. But the question is, in terms of resume building, is there best practices from like a starting point for freshmen kind of through senior year? So talking about how people can work with students to evolve their resume.
Yeah, so I think one thing just to remember is that a resume, you know, there's a big difference between a resume and a CV. Is a resume is a marketing tool. It's selected achievements that someone will put on there so that they can try to, I mean, the ultimate goal is to get an interview, right? So, you know, when you work with someone who's just starting to shape their resume, they might think that they have to list everything that they've done. They don't even know what to put on there. Is it just work stuff? Do I put school stuff? Like, can I put projects or, you know, whatever the case is. We have a bunch of samples, so you can see that all the sort of stuff that you can put on your resume. But one thing that, you know, first and second year students need to realize is that when they graduate, they really should not have the stuff from high school on their resume anymore. So this is where goal setting happens. And we say, okay, so if you need to fill up a page and you want all those things to look good to your future employer, what are you going to put on there? You know, are you going to get involved on a club and campus and take a leadership role? You're going to get involved in research, you know, an internship. Yeah, that's great. All this stuff is just experience. So what is the experience that you want to show someone? And, you know, for some students who have goals, like, yeah, I want to go into business. It's like, okay, well, let's orient our experiences toward business. Some students have no idea what they want to do, but that's okay because there's the other skill sets that need to be developed, like teamwork, communication, problem solving skills, analytical skills. So, you know, where are you going to gather those and how are you going to tell a story that you have them? And so that's usually the starting point. You know, scrub all your stuff from high school. What are you left with? What do you want to show someone? Now let's think about how we fill in those blanks. And Greg Pear from Target says, yeah, no high school stuff. I mean, It's real talk from, from an employer. They don't want to see that. They want to see what students have done since they've been in college. So sometimes that's tough for students to swallow too. They're a lot of times really proud of their accomplishments that they had in high school. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long ago, right? People keep stuff on their resume for like 10 years. I was just actually looking at my own resume yesterday and I was like, man, I got some really old stuff on here. It doesn't feel that old. And for students, high school doesn't feel that old either. I mean, that was like yesterday, what do you mean I got to get rid of that? But yeah, it's the reality.
I also often will talk with students who are earlier on in their academic journey about looking at position descriptions that they might be interested in to see the types of skills that they might want to try to get as they're looking to remove that high school experience.
Right, thinking about the future and aligning myself to it. Yeah. So Marianne posted a question, how would you have difficult conversation about wrong career choices? Mary, I'd love to hear some clarification on that so I can make sure I can answer that accurately.
Sure, thank you. So I think that was the main reason I wanted to be in this workshop today. So some backstory to that. So I'm a pre-vet advisor, right? So I advise students who intend to go to vet school. So I'm an animal science. And so on the first day of classes, 100% of the students who go to animal science want to go to vet school, right? That's fine, but it will not be a reality for a lot of the students just because going to vet school is really high strung and real high academic maintenance and all of that. And along the way, how things move and where you are, especially with all the COVID, their performance definitely drops. Sometimes it's unrealistic. Just because, there's a GPA cutoff and all of that, and they're all very sensitive issues. And for instance, I've had this conversation with the student, and she said, my mother wants me to go to vet school. And whenever the mother is involved or a parent is involved, you just stop talking because I don't know what I'm saying, whether I'm legal to say stuff or being incensed. And that was a really difficult conversation with a student. Unfortunately, after that, the student never showed up for any advising meeting. Right. So I have a lot of, and even my colleagues, we see a lot of students who are in the similar situation, but we don't know what's the best way to, we don't want, to discount their ambitions, or maybe they can still get to vet school, but there is a difference between wanting to do something and the reality of that thing being like, let's say if they do really bad in a very basic science class, there's no way they are going to be able to do the course load in vet school. It's impossible, right? And so they're struggling. They're such a nervous wreck. They have all these pressures, and so I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can definitely address that. So we have this conversation with students all the time. It's not just med school. We even have it where a student thought they wanted to be a teacher. They get all the way through and then they start student teaching and they're like, no, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Now what do I do with my life? Everybody told me I was going to be a teacher, right? So the difficult conversations, they are that difficult. And, one thing that you should just know about the parent thing is that students are protected by FERPA. So we have parents emailing us all the time about their student and stuff. And we have to tell the parent, like, I encourage you to have the student meet with me, those conversations, if the student wants to share them with you, they can. But if you want to participate in a career coaching meeting with us and the student, you have to sign a release form. Because we're legally bound to keep that student's information, confidential. Even if their mom is paying the bill, it doesn't matter. Now they're a student at UConn, so they're protected by that. That can be a bitter pill to swallow for the parent. And yeah, it can be a turnoff now. A student doesn't want to meet with you or whatever, but it can also open up the conversation for a student. Be like, listen, you can tell me we can talk about this because I'm not going to tell your mom, right? I can't. So there's all sorts of information on FERPA on the website. But to answer your question about having that difficult conversation, that conversation needs to happen sometimes. because things need to be put in motion early if there's going to be a change. We have probably one of our most popular programs is alternative routes to healthcare. And we have like 70 students, 80 students in person showing up to that to learn about what they can do instead of going to med school. Because there are a lot of things that you can do if you want to work in healthcare that don't require a degree in, you know, a degree, you know, you don't have to be a doctor or whatever the case. There's also a really good resource out there. It's called explorehealthcareers.org that can help students filter by, oh, how long do I want to spend in school? How much money do I need to make? And here are the majors and stuff that kind of align with these other health careers that are out there. A lot of times it's just giving the student the alternative instead of saying, you can't do that, so go figure it out. It's like, well, what else could you do that's going to fulfill those kind of goals of yours? You know, why is it that we want med school? Is it because you want to make all the money? Is it because you want to have this flashy title? Is it because you want to help people? And when we get to the root of what it really is, there are always other alternatives students can explore. So I hope that's helpful. I know the difficult conversation thing is hard. And, you know, it doesn't get easier, to be honest with you. It's hard telling someone that, I'm sorry, your dream is not probably going to come to fruition, but we can come up with other things. Parallel plans.
To answer your second question, Marian, about having something kind of like pathways to healthcare for pre-vet students, I think one of the biggest benefits of being a career champion is the close connection that you have with the Center for Career Development. And so if you wanted to incorporate an assignment into one of your classes that did focus on parallel plans, or worked with us to do some sort of presentation about parallel plans, or have you know, career coaching appointments with members of our team for some of your students, those are all things that we could talk about. So I would say you could absolutely reach out to us and we could figure out like specifics for any of you.
Yeah, and just one more note about the parents thing is it's pretty, you know, American cultural context centric to assume that you get to do what it is that you want to do. You know, culturally, sometimes for students, they do need to do what their parents want them to do. And that's just the way it's going to be. You know, and this is where conversation might come up with like, well, who helps you make those decisions? And you can kind of, you know, you can sense that, you know, they are not the decision maker. They are going to do what it is that their parents are telling them that they're going to do for a variety of reasons. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. So, you know, we try to keep conscious of this, that, you know, we can't, you know, we like to say like, yeah, just chase your dreams, do what you want to do. That's not the reality for everybody. So it's another kind of like balancing act, I think, that especially as we see more and more students from different cultural backgrounds showing up at UConn, we have to be reactive to that. So, yeah, I love these comments. This is great. So here's what we're going to do. We're really running. We got 15 minutes left. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. You should all have received an email. Jess, did you fire off that email with the presentation yet?
It's going now. So they
okay.
should.
Yep, so you're all going to get the presentation. I'm actually going to share my screen with you again. Hang on a second here. Just messed up. There we go. I want to just dive into one case study real quick. You'll have access to both of these in a second. Okay. Come on now. Here we go. So basically, what you want to do in this in the first case study, when you see it, you're going to want to answer this question. What area of career development is this student in? Are they in the explore phase, the develop phase, implement phase, a combination of both? Why? And then how would you coach the student? Maybe what questions might you ask? How might you approach this? And what questions might you have or wish you knew answers to? So the first question, and Jess is going to break you up into small groups, and we're going to work on this for 5 minutes, then we'll come back. Kai is a junior majoring in English. They had an internship last summer but didn't like it. This year, they're looking for a summer internship, quote unquote, related to their major. What kind of internship are they interested in? They're interested in publishing. So again, what areas do you think that Kai is in? And how would you coach the student? And what questions might you ask? I'm gonna send you away. It's 10:46. We'll see you back here in 5 minutes.
I'm making the breakout rooms now, so you will get to your room in just 1 second. Everybody should have gotten a request to join their room, so you might just need to accept it.
There they go. Hey, Evan.
You said 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were not. I thought I was going to a breakout room. Well, I guess I am.
Wait, do you want to go to one?
No.
Okay. I sent Steve to one, but
Yes, definitely send Steve.
yeah.
Awesome presentation, Aaron.
You like that?
I did.
I feel like, you know,
If you would be willing to, that was Alyssa, Hans, and Steve. If one of you would mind sharing some information.
I can go ahead and share.
Yeah, Alyssa's a great representative for the group.
So we were thinking that the student is likely kind of at the end of exploratory, beginning of development. But before we would say they were in the development stage, we would want to ask them why they didn't like their last internship, just to make sure that this next internship in publishing doesn't kind of actually have a lot of similarities. And then we'd want to ask, why do you want to be in the Hartford or Boston area? Is that just logistics where you're living, or is that where you want your future career to be? So then you're looking at things like potential networking and subjects like that. So
Awesome. Thank you. Group 2, Amy or Marianne?
I think we just discussed it was exploring, we felt as well. Yeah, and
we kind of discussed the same thing. We want to figure out why the student didn't particularly like the previous internship, and talk a little bit about what was earlier discussed in terms of the past and where they're going with for their next step.
Awesome. Thank you. Group 3, so Ashley, Carolyn, Katie, or Michael?
So I think we agreed that the student was still in the explore phase, and we also, like the other groups, were going to explore a little bit more why the student didn't like the internship, which actually could be a very important piece of information. Sometimes it's better to know what you don't like so that you can avoid it in the future.
Absolutely. I completely agree. The next group, Kim, Nikki, or Steve?
In addition to what everyone else has said, really kind of figuring out why that internship wasn't a great experience. Also going into a little bit of why they're interested in publishing. What is it about publishing that draws them to that area? And then that way, if publishing isn't something that they really wanted, okay, what is similar? What are some other things related to it that could also be an option for them?
Awesome, thank you. And our last group, Debbie, Liz, or Shona.
We basically said the same things and talked about why the student might be interested in publishing and what that looks like really. We tried to clarify some of those things. Also, we thought the student was in the exploratory stage as well. Just trying to define or get a closer understanding of what their idea of publishing looked like.
Awesome, thank you. And that is all of our groups, Erin.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that case study. One thing I will just say is keep an eye on when students are looking for something that is quote unquote related to their major, because this is sometimes a very confusing sticking point for students, and they're getting asked by their peers and their parents, what are you going to do with that? You know, and publishing is, yeah, maybe it's related to English. It's related to a lot of things. There are a lot of things related to an English major. So don't be afraid to kind of go down that road too and get an idea of what do you mean related. That's in quotation marks kind of on purpose in the case study. So thank you so much for everyone's participation and your questions and all that other stuff. You can follow up with me directly, any of the people on our staff as well. My email address, if you have questions after the presentation, is just Erin, ERAN, @uconn.edu. And I'd be happy to connect with you, answer any other questions. And thanks again, and have a great rest of your week. And